So, welcome to LiberalViewer Wednesday Live. Glad to see several people already joining me here. This is my live program on YouTube every Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. Pacific Time, where I take live questions from my viewers and try to answer them as best I can. And I also take some questions that people have posted during the week, and those I get a little better chance to prepare for, and I have a few of those for this week, and I'll start off with those after I check to see everything's going on. I see people saying that everything's going on good and no technical problems this week. I'm glad to see. So I'll get right to one of the early questions I had actually posted on the LiberalViewer Wednesday Live video comment section from last week. Question for next time from Never Restart 1012. What are your thoughts about the moral and legal guilt of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev after recent news suggesting he may not have had a weapon the whole time and did not participate in the shootouts, besides be injured by them? Is it possible that he will be found to have just been swept along with his brother's plan and, having not directly participated in any wrongdoing, acting only as an accomplice? Well, I'm not exactly sure what news reports those are, but that's always a possibility. Even whatever you hear in the news reports, even someone's innocence is always possible. You should always start with the presumption of innocence, even if you don't really believe it based on what you've heard in the media. If in the criminal justice system, he starts with a presumption of innocence, and I, at least based on my experience as a criminal defense attorney, will want to wait until I see the actual evidence. We've heard a lot about the FBI having Dzhokhar Tsarnaev on video actually planting one of the bombs at the Boston Marathon, but nobody's actually seen that. That would be good evidence there that he participated, and I'm sure that there will be some defense if it actually goes to trial and there's not some deal for cooperation in exchange for no death penalty. Something like that could also happen, but if it goes to trial, I'm sure that they will try to blame the brother, or it depends on what the facts are and what the evidence is, and there's a lot of that. Just what you hear in the media is often based on leaks from the prosecution side trying to set up a case, or then in this kind of media environment, there are all sorts of reasons. So I wouldn't draw any conclusions yet, but saying lack of responsibility or being brainwashed by the brother, those are always possibilities for a defense in this case, but who knows if there'll even be a trial. So let me go on to the next question I had. I don't know if you can read that. I'm actually having a little problem reading that, so let me look at the copy I have here. Oh, question for LiberalViewer Wednesday Live. It's about the rape laws in Great Britain and the United States, where I guess according to this question from Supergend, it says that in the UK, a person commits the offense of rape if they penetrate, says vagina, anus, or mouth of another person with his penis and does not consent to the penetration, does not reasonably believe the person consents, and then contrast it with the American law, which is said here that it can be penetration with any body part or object in the United States. And so that was the question. Oh, and then the actual question after that is, do you believe these laws are sexist against men, in that only men can be charged with rape and that women cannot be charged with rape? So one thing I would point out is that the American rape law quoted in that question, I'm not sure where that comes from, but rape is it's usually a state crime, and it varies from state to state, and it's defined differently in different states. So there is no one rape law in the United States, and there may actually be rape laws in the United States that are only applicable to men. I'm not sure. I don't know the rape laws in all 50 states. I remember when I was an undergraduate in college, I compared the rape laws in Maine and Maryland. I took a criminology course, and that was one of the assignments I got assigned rape laws in 2 states. Everyone got assigned, I think it was rape laws or marijuana laws in 2 states, and had to do a little report on them. So I don't really remember all the technical details about that. And then, of course, I'm licensed to practice law in California and Missouri, but I'd actually have to look up the rape laws to tell you all the details. But besides the fact that the rape laws in the United States vary from state to state, I do think the rape law quoted there from the United Kingdom is discriminatory, because rape isn't about sex. I mean, that's sort of the cliche. It's a crime of violence, and it can be perpetrated against men and women. Of course, a lot of men are raped in the United States in prison, although that's not very often prosecuted, but that definitely happens. And even occasionally men can be raped by women, though it's certainly more rare than the more conventional rape that's defined in British law. But yeah, I do think that's discriminatory, especially if there's no other law for sexual assault. I mean, in the United States, I think where there are rape laws that are male-specific like that, there are other laws, sexual assaults and sexual batteries and all sorts of other kinds of laws that even if it's not technically rape, that the things that are done against men would qualify. So I don't know of any jurisdiction in the United States where just because the man is the victim or there's no penis used in the perpetration, that it's not rape or some kind of crime. So I don't know much about British law, but hopefully in Great Britain they do have some kind of sexual assault laws that apply. Let me go get my next question here. I gotta load up my media files here. Let me get a couple of them ready. That was number 1, number 2. Okay, so next question here. From Terry Alther. Question for Wednesday. What do you think of the Rootstrikers conference that you attended? Were you able to meet Cenk Uygur? Well, as I actually mentioned in LiberalViewer Wednesday last week, I wasn't able to go to that conference. A lot of it was available on video, and I watched some of that. I also watched Cenk Uygur's presentation specifically, which has been uploaded to the Young Turks channel, and it has better quality audio than a lot of what's on the Rootstrikers page. And I also watched Lawrence Lessig. I haven't watched all of the stuff from Rootstrikers, but I watched his TED Talk that I think a lot of it was based on, and his Lesterland talk, and there's an ebook that goes along with it about Lesterland. I don't know. Here, I need to do a little Marco Rubio here. I've already been talking for a few minutes. I'm actually pretty sure I'm going to do a video on this about whether a constitutional amendment is required to deal. I think it's going to be called something like fixing government or fixing congressional corruption requires constitutional amendment or something like that. Because Cenk Uygur's talk, he almost presumed that it required a constitutional amendment, and he made a few arguments as to why, which I thought were not very strong arguments. And then in the Lawrence Lessig talk about Lesterland, and I was about to explain that Lesterland, it's about a hypothetical country where there are 2 elections. One is a general election like we have, and then there's a prior election where only people named Lester can vote, and they're like 0.4% of the, or 0.14, I can't remember the exact statistics, but they're very, the number of people named Lester in the country is very small. But in order to compete in the general election, you have to not necessarily win, but at least do very well in the Lester election. And as a result, in this hypothetical country of Lesterland, there's a bending of the laws to accommodate the needs or the desires of people named Lester, and they have an inordinate amount of power, even though the general election is eventually run by people, by like we do here. And anyway, his point is that that's kind of what we have in the United States, but it's not people named Lester, it's the money election that decides who gets to run in the general election. And those people have an inordinate amount of influence, and legislation bends sort of in a kind of covert way to do what those people want. And his solution is not a constitutional amendment. Professor Lawrence Lessig's solution is one of various kinds of public financing. And that's more what I think should be the solution. And anyway, so I'm heavily considering, even though I didn't get to make it to that conference, I'm considering using clips from Cenk Uygur's talk and clips from Lawrence Lessig's talk to explain why I think that the solution is public financing and not a constitutional amendment, and criticizing Cenk Uygur's arguments there and sort of supporting Lawrence Lessig. So that is my answer to that question. Another question I had preloaded, asked during the week. Oh, this actually was posted on Twitter. I must have missed one somewhere. But this is... No, there's one more after this. Suki tweeted to me earlier today a multiple-part question. Like to hear your views on the podcast patent and lawsuits. Also, closing Gitmo via executive order possible? Okay, so that's a two-part question. First, the podcast patent, which I looked, because this was asked in advance, I had a chance to look it up a little bit, and it's I wasn't aware of the specific case, but I do know about the whole patent troll phenomenon, which is a big deal. What the podcast patent case is about is there are these companies called patent troll companies that exist basically to, they don't really make anything. They buy up patents, and then they threaten lawsuits against people who are supposedly violating these patents, and get them to get big settlements, because patent lawsuits are some of the most expensive lawsuits. They require these experts and patent lawyers. It's a really difficult, complicated area of law, and so it's a big threat, and it takes millions of dollars to defend a patent lawsuit, so people just settle. And so there are these podcasters who are being hit with this patent lawsuit from people who say that they own the patent to the technology required to transfer MP3 to broadcast MP3s to the internet, or put them to mobile device. I think it's actually put them on mobile devices. And so they're going after just these comedians and pundits and stuff who do podcasts. The article I read was about comedian Marc Maron, how he's being hit by one of these lawsuits, and how he's protesting about it. And what do I think about the patent trolls in general is that it's a nasty part of copyright law. It's kind of akin to what happens with the DMCA and copyrights on YouTube, which is kind of a travesty that no one asked about, so I'm not going to go into. But I noticed there's some legislation, something called the Shield Law, that's been proposed by a Democrat whose name I didn't recognize, and Jason Chaffetz, this Republican from Utah, who I really dislike, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad legislation. And the Shield Law would make it harder, or would allow defendants in patent lawsuits to get their attorney's fees paid for if they ended up prevailing and there was no patent violation found. I don't know if that's the best solution, but I definitely think there needs to be a solution, and that maybe that having the loser pay in any case would be a better solution. But certainly patent trolls should have to pay for the hindrance on innovation that they're creating. And that's really what the problem is with the patent trolls, is that it makes people afraid to use new technology because they're going to be hit by these weird lawsuits. So and I think I had one more question that someone sent me as a message. Let me see, did I skip over it here? I think it's here it is. Yeah. So this was the last question, and I don't know if you can read that. I'm having a little problem reading on the screen. Oh, it's a Wednesday Live, please answer. I have a Muslim convert friend who says gays are a plague on humanity After he said Allah made gays because we are so sinful, I said, then he is an asshole that made people sinful to send them to hell. Raised my middle finger to the sky and said, Hasadiga I Bowe. He has seen the Book of Mormon. What would you do about someone showing that much prejudice? I don't have the drawing skills for Muhammad. I haven't seen the Matt Stone, Trey Parker play The Book of Mormon, although I looked up that Hasadiga Ibowe thing, and that's some lyric from one of the songs in the Book of Mormon. Let me go back to my camera here. I just happened to... One thing I would suggest is that just even though there is homophobia in Islam, like there is, it seems, just about in any community, there's also a big segment of the Muslim community that has tolerance for gays, and there's a lot of Islamic scholarship that backs that up. A friend of mine who's a Muslim posted on Facebook the other day, and I copied this as an answer. There's this Salon article, Stop Trying to Split Gays and Muslims, and I'm sure if you just Googled that title, you'll come up with this Salon article, and it talks about this phenomenon. This woman, Pam Geller, who's like a nasty media person who makes their living by being controversial in the media and says things that just inflame people and are based on nothing, I guess. Has been trying to inflame or divide Muslims and gays by making all these untrue, provocative statements, and it goes through and it gives a lot of information about how being Muslim doesn't necessarily mean being anti-gay any more than being Christian means being anti-gay or any other religion. That, people are going to find support for their hatred in their religion or in their lack of religion. I've said that, I think, in videos in years past, that I think people bring into religion a lot of the beliefs they had to begin with, and then they use their religion to justify those beliefs, and that's true for philosophies beyond religion too. So anyway, so that's my answer to that question. I'm going to check to see if I have some live comments here that I can take. Let's see. Nate's Lovebug asks, have you had criticism as a stay-at-home dad? Well, I mean, especially online, I have in my YouTube profile, and which used to be more prominent in some of the older channel formats, and I've always described myself as a stay-at-home dad online, and every now and then I get derisive comments about being a stay-at-home dad. Also, one of the reasons I think that I know that there's still a lot of sexist attitudes in society is being a stay-at-home dad. I often have people assuming that, I would often get comments when I was taking my daughter out shopping or other places. People would say, oh, babysitting for the day? People would always ask me that. My wife's a physician, and which is one of the reasons I've been a stay-at-home dad. And sort of a corollary to that is people always ask me like where my wife works, and I mentioned she works at this hospital or this medical group, Kaiser Permanente, and then the next question is always, oh, is she a nurse? I don't know. So why people, when they see me in a parenting role, ask me if I'm babysitting for a day, and when they hear my wife works at a medical facility, they ask if she's a nurse and not a doctor. I think just in my own life, just some very simple evidence of some of the sexist stereotypes that still pervade people's attitudes. And I know that feminism seems to come up all the time on these LiberalViewer Wednesday discussions. So let me go to the next question. Make sure I have some questions here. And someone's saying good night because it's too late across the pond. I enjoy my viewers across the pond. Sorry it's so late. I guess you'll have to watch in the morning, like you say. Um, Army Boy 57 asks, do you think that Senator Graham would be as willing to attack the president over the Boston terrorist attack if Mitt Romney were to be the president? Well, I think that's almost a self-answering question. I mean, Lindsey Graham, the way he's been reacting to this terrorist attack and the giving basic rights to someone charged with a crime, I mean, it's kind of sad, and it's especially after Lindsey Graham because he used to be a military lawyer. He was, I think, a JAG lawyer. If I know he was some kind of military lawyer, and when it came to the military commissions and some of those questions, he actually did, I think, brought some expertise and even some was somewhat reasonable about some of these questions. But when it's come to this Boston Marathon bombing, the way he wants to, trot out the whole enemy combatant thing instead of treating this like what it is, which is, these teenager and a 20-year-old who, as far as we can tell, just did a terrible thing based on, some sort of crazy ideology. To have that be something worth diminishing the constitutional rights that are, some of the basic humanistic values that are supposed to be our most cherished traditions in the United States, I just don't understand that. The danger from diminishing those rights is so much greater than any danger from this kind of bombing, as horrific as it was. It seems pretty clear to me. Let me see. I think I have a couple more questions. Time for a couple more questions here. Let me refresh here, and it's that SEB guy 93 asks, Mr. Liberal Viewer, what's your opinion of libertarianism? Well, I think that of all the conservatives, the ones I'm closest to right now are the libertarians. I have I sometimes have even considered myself what I call a liberal libertarian, which means that, at least what it means to me, is that I have a lot of skepticism for the use of the coercive power of the government, and especially when it comes to the rights to life and liberty. But I think I part with libertarianism, at least current libertarianism, when it comes to government regulation of property and what the government can do non-coercively to offer help to people without coercing them or giving people benefits. So I guess that would be my contrasting my liberalism with current libertarianism. So I think that answers that question. Next question from Michael Snow asks, what's your opinion on Syria? What do you think should be done? What do you think will be done? Well, it's a difficult situation. It's one of those situations where none of the options are really that good. There are a lot of United States foreign policy questions that don't have a lot of good solutions. And I'd rather see a slower response. It's been a couple years now. And I'd rather see Obama's slower response and a more measured response than the kind of responses I saw from the George W. Bush administration. I do think that the United States has some responsibility, especially to provide humanitarian aid. But it's a complicated situation, and the application of U.S. military force isn't necessarily going to make things better. Although I think that could be an option if, especially because I'd like to see U.S. participation in ending some of the dictatorships in the Arab world and that the U.S. has supported in the past. But I don't really want to see another war like the war in Iraq or even the war in Afghanistan. Even Libya. I mean, I think Libya might be a closer model, but Syria isn't like Libya, and there are a lot of difficulties. And so, what do I think will happen? I think that the Obama administration is slowly coming to find some way to hasten the end of the Assad regime after the use of the chemical weapons. If you watch my LiberalViewer Sunday live clip roundup last Sunday, I had this clip from Chuck Todd where it sounded like he had talked to someone in the administration and found out that this evidence of the use of chemical weapons came a little earlier than the Obama administration wanted, because they were still working on coming up with their plan, and they also didn't have the evidence strong enough to convince the Arab League, and they really want to get the Arab League and the international community involved so that it's not really the use of American force. So what I think will happen is that over the next few weeks and possibly months, that the Obama administration is going to step up its involvement in using the Arab League and more local forces to find the good guy rebels as opposed to the Islamist and Al-Qaeda rebels, to hasten the end of Bashar al-Assad. But exactly how that's going to happen, I'm not sure. It's a very difficult problem. I think I have time for one or two more questions. Let's see. Never saw that coming asks, what are your feelings on the immense amount of media coverage given to the Boston Marathon bombings? Is this a more mellow ramp up to a mellow 9/11 litmus test to see how many rights we will give up? Well, I mean, the media, they just love a big story that they can concentrate on and put all their resources into. I mean, in some ways it's easier for them to cover one story than try to shuffle in all these different stories. And the cable news is always looking for time to fill, and this is also, I guess, it increases their ratings when they have some sort of emergency. I mean, I think the overemphasis, I mean, it is a big story, but you compare it to the more people who died at the explosion of that fertilizer plant, or all the people who died from gun violence, or I mean, it's definitely selective media coverage. And I mean, I think it does help those who want to use it to curtail people's rights. And I'm been a little disturbed at all this coverage of the Miranda warnings question, and how long that he was only that Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was only questioned for 16 hours. One thing I saw covered in like one print story that I haven't seen hardly anywhere is, it says that Dzhokhar, during the 16 hours of interrogation prior to when Dzhokhar Tsarnaev was read his Miranda rights by the magistrate judge, on multiple occasions he asked to speak with an attorney, and they just went right on questioning him. So that is definitely a violation of the Miranda decision, if they ever try to use any of the stuff that he said while he was being interrogated there as evidence against him in court. I think, I mean, unless there's a really strong public safety exception, which it's hard to understand 16 hours worth would fit within, what's in the US v. Quarles, that 1984 case, saying you can ask, where's the gun? That doesn't take 16 hours, and it's hard to understand what 16 hours of questioning could all fit into the public safety exception. So I wish there'd been more media coverage of that aspect of it, and not as much of, I've been watching a lot of the Fox News coverage, especially of his mother and the woman's DNA, and of course today there are the 3 college friends of Dzhokhar Tsarnaev who are being charged with obstruction of justice. So I appreciate all of you for joining me for another episode of Liberal Viewer Wednesday Live. I think I reached about the maximum time I have for the show, and hopefully I'll be making another produced video soon. And of course, I'm kind of proud of how well the Liberal Viewer Sunday clip roundup went last Sunday, and I'm hoping to get a bunch more clips for this Sunday, and it should be a good show. So join me at 6:30 p.m. Pacific time on Sunday for that show, and next Wednesday 4:30 p.m. Thanks for joining me, and see you all soon.